Hey, this is gonna be a longer one today, but it's something that I was actually really interested in. So I wanted to talk to you guys about it. So you might want to grab some water or something, and this stuff here might actually help you out long term. And I have quite a bit of notes out, so I had to jog myself here and see where it goes, but. Yeah. So basically, this is just a general guideline on how to solve problems. It's not going to be anything specific, right? I'm not going to be like, this is how you solve this. No. Okay? This is not for any specific context. Is that I made it more generalized, or I pose multiple different examples. So if one of them clicks for you, maybe this will help you out, and then you can go use that when you encounter whatever problem you have, and maybe it'll help you out, maybe it won't. I don't know. My life experience is going to be different from yours, but I think with that being said, how to solve problems. So the first part that I have is identifying your problems. And the reason why I have this as a whole segment is because it's very important to understand what are you dealing with. Because if you mismark what you're dealing with, then you're going to be solving a problem that you never really had, right? So then if you misplace the problem, you're going to solve something which most likely will create more problems that you never wanted to have to solve or even needed to solve in the first place. Right. Obviously, there's gonna be like some things that come along the way if you're solving a more generalized problem, relate quality of relationships or something. Then you're gonna have to deal with now my speech has to be changed so it sounds like this and not that. You're gonna have those little problems that go along, right? I mean, my relationship's bad. I now need to stop drinking soda. It's that makes no sense, right? That's not identifying the problem correctly. All right. So identify the problem. And what I mean is, for starters, how was the problem created, right? Was it created by your perception of you introspecting and being okay, this is a problem I have, I need to solve it? Or did you or is this more okay, a external stimuli, for lack of a better word, is making this a problem for you, right? So my example of this is, my personal example is my inability to talk to women. It sounds really stupid, but I'm not exactly the best woman talker. I'm not really sure why. I'm very sociable. The people that I have a good social group, well, quality wise. But I can talk to people, right? That's the main point. I can talk to people, but sometimes talking to women just it kind of disconnects from me, which who knows. But so there's my personal problem with my perception of my experiences, right? That's me going through, rewinding my memories and looking at, okay, I believe this is a problem that I need to solve. But then you also get the situation where, in this example, being antisocial. That's seen as more of a universal problem, which therefore would cause you to have a really difficult time to get into social interactions, gain the mental and physical benefits, perhaps, of meeting new people, and that could be deemed as a really big regret, or it could even lead to future mental problems, right? When I define mental problems, I usually mean it in a more generalized context, how most people think, maybe anger issues is a problem, right? Just more generalized. I don't mean you're gonna have this little thing and it's okay, whatever, we can have a conversation all day of what's this, what's that, is it good, is it bad, so on and so forth. You get the idea. So, and then real quick, what I think I just defined antisocial, but it was basically your inability to curate and manage a healthy living conversation with people that can fruit into some sort of value between you and the person or you and the group, right? The inability to do that, I guess, is what I would define as antisocial. So after that, let's see here, what do I have here? Right. So in this identifying the problem, you have to also understand, like, is your problem a survivability problem or a, like, quality of life problem for you, right? What I mean by this is, on the one hand, are you going to have to do this in order to be at the minimum societal, like, standard, which I defined as the I'll read this word for word. Minimum baseline that the majority adhere to so groups and individuals can have success without savagery. And then my example would be like driving, right? Like, everyone has that minimum standard of being able to go out and drive on the right side of the road and not the left. Okay? Like going right on the one way and not a left, right? And then that would be like a minimum, right? And then a way that a thriving thing, right? Like, you can still survive if you're on a sports team that's like bad, right? Like if you're on a soccer team or a football team, wherever you're from. If that's bad, right? Like maybe like, you know, the guys don't connect to each other, or they don't really like, their mindsets aren't the same, they don't like connect to the game together, right? Just like with any sport. Then yeah, it'll be bad, but you're not gonna crash on the side of the road or kill two people or kill a parent and a child because you're driving on the left side of the road instead of the right. You get my point? So I say this is, so you have that structure, and now you're able to take this and, from earlier, like the antisocial problem, if you were to go solve that problem, you now understand, okay, this is a minimum baseline for me to work properly in whatever I'm doing. So then now I can focus on more of my third world problems to thrive, right? Because at the end of the day, right, you got your first world problems and your third world problems. The first world problems is like, I did not eat today. I have to eat or else I'm going to die, right? So like, that's a problem that you have to solve. You have to be like, okay, let me eat something. Obviously, mine is overeating, anorexia, etc. But, what was I saying? And then, well, the other one, right? Maybe like becoming a better soccer team, having the guys talk to each other, get them to like get the ball through, communicate properly, right? Getting those things down, getting the chemistry of the team. That is something that you could live without, but it's very nice to have because it allows you to thrive better than it would be without, obviously. So, now, going back to this again, if the problem was creating this, how to say this right? I want to say it in a way that helps you understand like how you're going to get there and what is properly defining your problem, right? So so now when you get to this point and you look through and you're like, okay, the problem has these characteristics to it, right? You have to think about the problem as its own person, as its own being, right? This problem has these characteristics. It's this. Now, you could be like, oh, a problem's bad. Obviously, that's not what I mean. I mean, like, oh, a problem, this, like, for example, maybe you have really sloppy handwriting, right? So your problem is really sloppy handwriting. Now, what are the characteristics of this? Well, it makes my message less accurate. or harder to understand, and it makes my chance of being seen like as a quality person less, because people don't understand what I'm paraphrasing or conceptualizing because they can't read it, right? So on and so forth. You get that point and you're like, okay, but now reverse engineer that to where you don't know what your problem is. Okay, but you know it exists. So if you characterize the problem, then all of a sudden, oh, my problem is that I actually can't drive, right? Like maybe, oh, whatever car I get in, the brakes like seem to be really weird, right? Like the brakes don't break in time that I do. There are times that I want to brake. Maybe that's because your mind muscle connection, right, is your brain or your foot waiting like half a second before it presses the brakes when your brain's telling you to press the brakes, right? So then maybe like you, in effect, you have to end up like slamming the brakes a bit. So like that would be, okay, I had to slam the brakes a lot when I really shouldn't be. Oh, okay. Well, maybe my foot is having delayed reaction from my brain. And that could, if you're noticing like slow motor skills, I guess, then that could obviously mean a bunch of health reasons, et cetera, et cetera. But like you start to understand how to define your problem, how to identify the problem. Because without accurately identifying it, like I mentioned earlier, your quality and capability of pushing forward after you solve the problem is going to be diminished because you didn't actually solve the problem, right? It's like trying to it's like trying to pass a chemistry test using numbers from math. It's like, unless you can make a connection to where that solves the problem, it's never going to solve the problem. It just doesn't make any sense, right? So, with that being said, it is important to note, though, that for some people, it is kind of hard to, because sometimes these problems are very big, right? Because, like, the size of the problem could be indefinite, and that's only dependent. The only person that can define how major or minor a problem is you, the listener. So if you're willing to balance between the directness of you trying to identify the problem and therefore solve it, and then the change, like being able to maybe change a lot or change a little to make sure that your headspace, your brain, like can acclimate to it, right? Then you're able to avoid usually the discomfort of solving a problem, because I mean most people, like a solid percent, I'm willing to say that a solid percentage of people, solid chunk of them, like they don't want to solve a problem because usually it's like an emotional aspect, I find, but it could also just be because they don't want to do it because they know, oh, while solving the problem, I'm going to be really uncomfortable, right? So maybe they weigh that higher than actually solving the problem. Obviously, that's like a whole different discussion. I could go in about how it's like kind of like a poison to you and so on and so forth, but that's another thing. So, like a note I have here is an example is like people moving houses, right? Like if your family moves a house, like I am currently a junior in high school. If I were to move to like some other place like not nearby, I don't know any of the people, like that's gonna suck because you're gonna feel like lonely and isolated, and that's a lot of discomfort, right? I have here high directness equals high change equals high discomfort, right? It's like a 3-chained equation. And for a lot of people that ends up being the case. There are some rare circumstances, but I think that directness and change will really emphasize how you start seeing, okay, what's the point of me being able to directly change a problem? should it be more, should it be less, right? And this all ties into identifying the problem, because then you can start to lay out a map to identifying the goal, which would therefore solve the problem, which I'm going to get into right now, actually. Haha. But, right. So, obviously, going into all this, there's usually like the generalized advice, right? You might hear it in school, you might hear it from someone or like some stranger. You might hear like even like the basic thing of like SMART goals, if you ever heard of them. If you didn't, it's not really relevant, but like it's supposed to be like an acronym, by the way. If for those who don't know, it's like an actual acronym. But it's like, okay, here's a generalized acronym that's supposed to help, but maybe it won't help you. Like, it doesn't actively care and mold for your situation, right? Because like, okay, one of them is like measured objective of like how much time you have to solve the problem, right? If my problem is solving the quality of my relationships, that's something more exponential that happens over time. You can't be like, oh, 2 weeks, done. Like, that's not how it works. You keep improving the quality of the relationship, right? So that's where something like that would be flawed, in my opinion. So that's why I want to stay away from like that old like the old school generalization of how to solve problems, right? Like the kind of like put your back into it type people, which like that's good too, but you also got to put your brain into it, yeah? Like, if you aren't using your headspace to solve a problem, then how are you going to, like, solve future problems or do anything of that sort, yeah? Alright. Now, for my second section on how to solve problems, identify exactly the goal, which is what I was mentioning, right? So, my first point I have here is, does the goal have undeniable proof that it solves your problem? If not, incorrect path. That's what I've written down, right? And my example of this is drinking soda to clean your teeth, right? That's obviously incorrect. If you want to clean your teeth, you don't drink soda, right? But obviously, this is more of an extreme case. This is just to get your brain on the same level as like, oh, okay, now you can apply this to minor circumstances or minor things that change, but yet again, they don't actually solve what I want to solve, right? So let's say it's like, how I describe it is giving, it's like giving Tren to someone who has low testosterone, and if you don't know what Tren is, it's like basically like, it's like an injection that you can get, or like almost like a shot, where like you get more testosterone or like muscle building stuff. But it's like, if you want, like, assuming that you want higher testosterone with like normal health benefits, not like becoming like just like some jack druggie essentially, then don't take Tren, because that's not going to solve your problem. I mean, yeah, it solves your problem in the short term, but like long term, I'm pretty sure I could be wrong with this, but I think that it also possibly leads to like infertility, because like of how, maybe I could be wrong. Don't quote me after that. But so that first part, right, is the point of like making sure that you put some time into saying, oh, okay, this is what's exactly going to solve my problem, and it's not going to be some other arbitrary thing that I think solves my problem, right? So let's see here. Let's see what I've written down here. Right. So the next part of identifying exactly the goal to then solve the problem that you identified previously is, how much of your goal is impacting you, and are you going to be okay with the effects of that change? I wrote this down because like I mentioned, like it's kind of like how I mentioned earlier that like the impact, like high directness, high change, right? So if you have this high level of impact of change in this short amount of time, you're going to want to really make sure that it is going to be quality change and not just like a rubber band, right? Here's what I mean by rubber band, right? So here is your problem, right? Pretend I have a rubber band here, right? Solution's up here. You come to the solution, you're getting there, you're trying to hang it around the nail of solution. We'll call it that. You try to hang it around there, but the nail's weak. It's weak. It's not connected to anything. And now the nails across the room. Rubber band just hit you in your hand. You're not feeling great. Maybe the nail actually hit your hand too, and it like bounced off. Now it's on the floor somewhere, right? Now, metaphorically speaking, this is what I mean. As in, now you have to go find that solution to the problem again, a better one, and then put it into the wall properly, even if it takes more time, then sling the rubber band to it, and then you're able to let go from your other hand, which is the old you, and then identifying the new you, which has solved this problem properly, right? So, and then also with this, and my example is that I have also here is, it says, this is what it says, not being, it's like, let's say you're like working at some like classic office job, right? Cubicle, whatever. It says, not being able to go to future meetings because you're dedicating your time to basketball instead, right? So are you going to be okay with the fact that you might have to catch up at work at some point, maybe on the rare chance you actually miss out on something valuable during a meeting, right? So whatever that may be. And then, but now you're dedicating your time to basketball instead, so instead of being at that meeting, you are at a club that you go to and you're practicing basketball, okay? So now, is this effect going to be okay with you because you're sacrificing something else to solve this problem that's been nagging you for a while, right? Like, you have to, because like, how I say it is that you have to choose between two poisons. Either the one that you're currently living with, that you already want it to be solved because you identified the problem, so you already want this to go away. Or do you want to deal with the other problems that might arise from now switching to that goal or solution, right? And obviously, I think, from my perspective, is that you should choose being okay with these like other problems that might come up because they're not going to be as major. And maybe they do build up and become major in the future, and then you have to solve it. But then maybe that in itself is a problem that you have to address, right? So yet again, I think it'd be better to do this. So then, now you're solving that bigger problem of, oh, I want to be better at basketball. Oh, my relationship sucks. And now you're converting that into a solution which is capable of helping you and improving the quality of yourself. Right. And so, and then obviously, once you've kind of roughly got the goal or the solution, what do you want out of your goal? Right. So let's say, okay, I want to spend more time at basketball. Why? Because I want to smoke that dude and who keeps trash talking me and when I run up three street ball. Okay. So what do you need to do that? A lot. How so? Well, I'm not very good at dribbling yet. Like I don't really have a good hand-eye coordination in my left hand as much as my right. So I can't really cross it over and like drive the other way. So my patterns are very predictable in how I get to the basket. Okay. So now we know what you want out of your goal, right? Because like your goal could be broad, but the way you go to your goal should be specific. That's how I think about going about it. Obviously, everyone has different ideas. Fair enough. So Now, let's say, right, now when you're at this point, right, when you've watched 25 minutes of this video and you're at this point, now you can be like, okay, I've solved this problem, kind of, like I've got a solution down, but I want it to be quick. Now, obviously, everyone wants to solve their problems quick. Oh, you want to get rich quick? Oh, you want to get this quick? Like, classic fucking clickbait everywhere. So, when you do this, you have to actually ask yourself, do you need a time constraint for this goal? Right? Like, are you just like let's say, like going back to a dribbling example, if you just want to get better at dribbling, then do you really need to jam 2 hours of practice every day to dribbling like on its own? Like, that's a little too far. Like, I would be safe to say that that's like more of a mental burnout, and then you're just not getting a proper workout. So, sorry. So, and I guess another way that you could also look at this, because I have a note here, is you should also base this off your past goals, like that required like decent effort, right? Like, think about that one goal that you got that required a lot of effort to get to it, right? Would that have been better for you if you think, right? Would that have been better for you if you had time constraint? If you had 2 months instead of no time constraint? If you had 6 months instead of 3 months, right? Because every person is going to be different based on that reward outcome. It's like some people can wait a lot longer for reward outcomes than others. That's just kind of how the world works, how people work, so on and so forth. So, and then obviously we can all be like, oh, well, you should do this for this goal and that for that. But like, obviously, I'm here to generalize it for you. You have to, like, a lot of people don't understand. You have to put the genuine effort in to solve the problem yourself, because I can't solve your problems, which you should know. You should have known, or if you don't, you do now, that in this video I'm not going to solve your problems. I'm not going to solve them. I'm going to give you a generalized format that potentially could help you, right? That sounds convincing that this should solve your problem. So, with that being said, the little things like time constraints, how you should go about it, you have to formulate that yourself based on your experience, based on what works for you. And then hopefully that will help you actually get over the obstacles that are making your life less fulfilling or less quality, per se, right? And on more of a little side tangent, I think that's like one of the greatest feelings that I think I have. Like, I've only been alive for not that long, but one of the greatest feelings that I have is when I'm able to sit down and create something that solves a problem, right? Like, maybe like this is more directly, or like if I'm able to sit down and get into a focused state and just solve my problems or solve a problem that's like come up. Like, that's such a rewarding feeling for me, because like something goes on in my brain where I just laser beam onto whatever it is, and then if I'm able to solve it, it's great. And even if I'm not, I still gain a valuable experience out of it, like I'd like to say. And I really love that feeling. So that's what I'm proposing to give to you and to others around. But anyways, back to what I was talking about here. My next point is the goal mainly for yourself, right? And the reason why I say this is because a lot of people have like more grand goals that are like, you know, almost like chivalrous. I think I said that word right. And they just think it's like, oh, I'm doing this because I feel so good for other people. It's like, At least from my thinking, I'm like, really? Do you really feel that way? If you do, great, right? Like, that's fine. It's just, if you're going into something where you're trying to solve your own problems, is that actually your own problem? Or are you imposing that on yourself because of somebody else? Now, if you're trying to become more accountable and whatnot, maybe that will help you, right? That's another whole entire topic. But, so, and the reason why I also say this is because people don't like to tap into like what I call like a dark side, like straight up like kind of like out of like a Star Wars movie, you know, like the dark side. That sounds stupid, but you get my point, right? So a lot of people do not like to tap into their dark side because they think it's like gonna cause massive destruction for everybody. Like they think it's gonna go like to like a Stalin level and like that. It's like, no. Like there's a reason why there's bank robbers and then there's Stalin. Right? Like they're two completely different people. Like the Stalins and the Hitlers of the world are called the Stalins and Hitlers of the world because of a reason. Like they were very, very bad people. Like generally. Right? So it's okay to tap into like a little bit of like that the darker energy that you have, like the even like hatred or like something like that. At least from my belief, is what I think is that it's actually worse if you suppress it while trying to solve your problem because you think that in the long run it'll become better for you, when in reality it's like it's kind of like on a more physical sense, it's basically taking your hand. Do you know what a vice grip is? Like you use it usually when you have to like maybe glue a couple pieces together, or you have to measure something maybe, or you have this like some complicated thing and you need to hold it in place. That's a vice grip. Now, you're only supposed to hold it in place temporarily. If you keep it there for 10 days, by the time you unwind it, it's just gonna crumble because you just pressure it. It's like doing the same thing. It's like a hydraulic press. Like you put your hand on a hydraulic press hard enough, like long enough, your hand will break. Right? It will turn into a disgusting human mush. That sounds very bad, but right. So don't vice yourself of your own energy because you think it's morally correct for others. That just makes no sense, right? Like I'd rather have you tap into like some dark fantasized energy a little bit. Like obviously don't become like a Hitler or Stalin, but like tap into it a little bit, so that way it'll actually propel you into creating more energy and resources and mindful awareness to understand the goal to get the goal that solves the problems, right? So, but yet again, your goals can also have effects on others too. So I guess in a way you do have to be a little bit careful doing this, but I think you have to be like a lot less careful than what people have made it out to be. Because you're synthesizing your own energy to solve a problem. You're not like actively telling someone to die. It's just like you're using whatever little like dark, you're using that like dark thing in the corner, and you're like, oh yeah, that hammer that's sitting over there could actually be useful, right? Go grab the hammer, use it. Like a blacksmith cannot weld a sword without a welding, I think it's a hammer, I don't know what it is, but like, you know, the thing that they do this with, the ding ding ding, yeah, that. Like, what if what are they gonna use this? It's like, okay, well, maybe it won't hurt him, so it's morally better for him to use this, so that way he doesn't actually hit his hand and like burn it and, you know, get injured. But it's like, you're never gonna weld a quality sword with a seltzer water bottle. Close enough. So you have to be okay with tapping in, like, moral of the story here, be okay with tapping into your dark energy to help you, to propel you into solving your own problems and getting up to here, right? And then Also, if there is like a larger, how do I say this? If there's a larger, I have it here as like an ambition that your goal stems from. So like maybe your goal is to become better at basketball, and then you have the dribbling thing that we're talking about. Maybe since that stems from a larger goal, you might need a system of goals to get you to that ultimate, like basically like a desire at that point, right? So maybe you have to have a section of whatever amount of time that works for you for dribbling and then shooting and then passing, all basketball things, right? So, and then obviously you're going to have to be able to figure out which sequence of those events is correct for you, because like obviously timing and all that, right? So it might take you a solid 4 or 5 hours at first to, like obviously not for most, but for some goals, right? It might take that long to specifically sit down and go through and make sure, okay, I'm checking off this, I'm checking off that, this helps me for my goal, this helps me for my goal, this doesn't, get out of here, right? It's basically like, David Goggins talks about this a lot, it's like cleaning your garage, but I'm taking that and applying it towards your goals. Like if you look up like David Goggins cleaning your garage thing, like mental garage, you'll see what he talks about, and you'll be able to understand like, okay, this is what he means. This is what I mean, right? So, sorry. But so once you've defined your goal that solves your problem properly and accurately to your best knowledge, and you sat down for a while, maybe this takes you an hour, maybe this takes you 10 minutes, I don't know, and you finally solved it. Now, the third part, which I believe is going to be the most important part, because like we've talked about, right? Here's my sandwich so far. We've talked about identifying the problem, which is the top bun, and then solving the problem, which is the bottom bun, right? You're trying to go from top to bottom here, right? Digging for gold, whatever. So, top from bottom, you go down, but there's no meat of the sandwich yet. This is the meat of the sandwich. So if you made it this far, congratulations. You've gotten to the meat of the sandwich. It's been a 40-minute long sandwich, but you're gonna get the point. Okay, that was weird, but anyway. So now the last part is to make it habitual, right? Make it a habit. This is the implementing part, right? For long term. So obviously the first part of this is time, which makes sense because in order to do anything, you really need time. In order for me to do this, I need time. So do you have a proper time window, or do you need to make one, right? Like I was mentioning earlier, right? If you just leave an office meeting to go practice basketball, your boss is going to be like, what the hell are you doing, right? Like, that's not a proper time for you to just, like, up and out. Most of the time, anyways, right? Obviously, there's certain circumstances where you can, but I'm not going to, like, go into that. That's my water, by the way. And if anyone else just started drinking water, cheers. So, anyways. So, right, my example is like, do you have like 7 p.m. always open every day? Or do you have 30-minute chunks in every day, but you don't know when they're going to be, right? So now, what I would say is, well, obviously the easier thing is to have a proper time window where it's like 7 p.m. is open always. But if you don't have that, I would say either you have to adjust. You have to either do two things. Either one, you have to teach yourself whatever skill set you have, right? Or whatever skill set you want to learn. You're gonna have to like teach that yourself. You're gonna have to go through the mistakes. You're gonna have to figure out the mistakes, which is a really hard part. Or and get the right lessons from them, which is also very hard. Or you're going to have to switch up your time a bit to where you can cut that process and just get like a trainer or something, right? And obviously we all know that getting a trainer would be much easier than having to go through, like a bunch of different like hundreds of more hours trying to figure out what are mistakes, what are not, so on and so forth, and like teaching yourself that. But minus that point, I would say once you have a proper time window, you're really set. Like you're ready to make the action, do the thing, stick with it long term, which is huge. Stick with it long term so you actually become good at it. Then you end up being the person smoking the guy in the 3-on-3 street ball that I was mentioning earlier. So, with that being said, the next thing is, what small activity is proven to reach your identified goal? So, if, for example, you're trying to get better at dribbling, well, first of all, you need to go outside and dribble the basketball in different ways, right? Like, that's a small activity. It's going outside for maybe 20 minutes a day dribbling. Just dribble around a bit, right? Now you have that. You've identified the small activity that's reaching your identified goal, that's proven to reach your identified goal from earlier. Now you can get ready to get out of here and go do that thing, right? To eventually get to the desired goal which you like. So, with that being said, that's a real quick point. We don't need to really dive into that. So, this one I might dive into a little bit though is there multiple activities which need to be blended in at once, or do they need to have separate attention in order to get to your goal, right? Like earlier with the basketball example, dribbling, passing, I think it's dribbling, passing, and what was the other one? Shooting, right? So, do these activities? Do you need to blend in these activities at once, right? Like, do you always need a teammate to pass the ball to? Do you always or can you just find a time where you just do a separate time where you can test how hard or how soft you pass the ball at different times? Maybe you go boom, 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 or you go boom, boom, right? Because obviously different scenarios require different passing speeds, so on and so forth. But, so are you going to need to blend these in at once? Are you going to have to do 5 minutes of shooting, 5 minutes dribbling, 5 minutes of this? Are you going to kind of blend them in as you go? Or do you think that it would be better for you to individualize these to have 20 minutes of each, right? So now comes the important part of recognizing which one works for you. This one's really important based off past experiences of how you developed your goals. But so when you get that and you start to understand how that works for you, then you can sorry, I'm just getting distracted. I apologize. But now you start to understand, okay, this is what I need, this is how I'm going to do it. You get the logistics down, you get the details down. Perfect, right? And obviously, I'm not going to be able to do that for you, as I mentioned before. I just can't. I can't do that. I can't be oh, you have to do this for this long. Maybe you get influenced. Maybe because I said 20 minutes. You're oh yeah, maybe I should do it for 20 minutes. That's a good time. But I don't know. I don't play basketball, right? I did as a hobby. And I'm not any LeBron James or something. I'm a 5'4" white dude, if anything. So, with that being said, right. See, I'm trying to figure out, because I have an example not written down right here. And it's an example about keeping money after winning the lottery. And I'm trying to see. Got it. So if you're, if you win a lot of especially like gamblers, like lottery like players, right? They scratch their ticket. They actually win like a lot of money, right? Then maybe you get the winning ticket, right? You win the lottery. Okay. Now maybe this money could solve quite a bit of your problems. Fair enough. But the more important thing here is, do you understand that you need to build a skill set to keep that money, right? Because if you don't keep the money, then there's really no point in even winning the lottery in the first place. Which I think is the reason why the lottery is able to work. Personally, it's because very few people actually keep their money after winning it. This is a little bit side tangent, but right. In order to participate in the lottery, you have to go and consume something to buy something. You have to go buy a lottery ticket. You have to go buy this. You envelop the consumer addiction mindset. That's what I call it, right? Where like, the shiny object syndrome is the more popularized version of it, right? So, whatever. You get the idea there. But someone keeps buying tickets over and over and over and over and over again, and they finally win. Okay, maybe that justifies going to the lottery, but now what are you going to do? Like, are you going to properly keep the money? Probably not, because you have a consumer mindset. So you're probably just going to be like, oh, you're going to like pull a Shaq when he first got his big money contract and get Superman and everything and buy a huge mansion and whatnot, right? So, and then, like, you have to keep in mind, though, that money income is not reoccurring. Like, you're not reoccurring getting the money. It was a one-time thing. So it just goes back down. And then there was never any point of you having the money in the first place, right? And so I think this puts on to a bigger aspect of making sure that, like back from earlier, that the problem you identified, after you solve the problem, that these skills will still be useful to you as you go on, right? Like the skills they develop along the way. Because obviously the more important thing is to be able to develop quality skills, which can solve poor or quality problems. So after all this, when you identify these concepts, act. Keep it within the same zone you started at, and correct yourself with experts' research. And then once you apply it, do the work and enjoy the pain that comes along with it. Because that pain is going to be the reason your problems get solved, right? So, basically all I have. I hope this helps. And I put a bit of energy into this, so if you like what I got here, thank you. And if I come up with something like this again, I'll show it to you. Might help you out, might not, but later.